All right. Well, welcome everyone. We are going to be having a well needed conversation today about the topic of insurance for practicing professionals who bring their therapy animals into the work that they do. So, I'll take just a few moments to get us going. As you join us, if you're joining us live, please let us know you're here. Put your name in the chat, maybe where you're from. If you partner with a therapy animal or if you hope to partner with a therapy animal, let us know. I see a hello from Bree. So we are live. And as we talk today, if any questions come up, please also put them in the chat. I'm going to be monitoring them so that we can ask the true insurance expert himself. So we are joined today by David Pearsall, a certified insurance counselor who specializes in creating policies for the AAI field and for the animal field in general. So I'd love to get started today by hearing from you just about how you got started creating policies for this very specific intersection.
Yeah, thank you for having me today. What happened was it was really we fell into the industry by accident. We started working with pet sitters and dog trainers all the way back to when I started my career in 1995. We actually had already begun in our agency working with a pet sitter association, which was just getting started. And so, as we put together our first policies, what we did was there were some things that were excluded under a lot of policies out there. And so these associations approached us for coverage and making sure, one, that we covered the animals, and because that's such an important part of what all of our clients do. And then, two, making sure that they had adequate coverage. Then with whether it's professional liability for a dog trainer or for a professional, or it could be some of the other things that we offer as far as in-home boarding and that sort of thing for trainers and pet sitting care providers. But long story short, I was at a dog trainer conference and we started getting hit up about 2008, 2010. 'Cause I've been doing this now for 27 years in the pet world. And so I've been going to conferences and trade shows all these years. And we would start getting questions. Can you cover a therapy dog? And so, I set out, started to ask questions and learn, educate myself, being on the difference between therapy and service dogs. And, also had worked with the multiple national training associations, and talked to the people who either were part of those, either nonprofit or for profits. And they teach me every day. They still teach me when I go out to trade shows. If there's something we don't know, there's something they like to see covered. If I already know the answer, I certainly will give it to them. But if I can, I like to research and educate myself, and figure out ways to do things to make it for everybody a better experience. Because most of the people we work with, they love pets and they're either into pet care, they're into therapy animals, and they want to take care of people. And a lot of times they don't understand insurance and they don't know what they don't have.
Right.
And so that's our job as the as a pet care insurance provider and pet services, to make sure that we educate you and everyone in the industry. And that's what I pride myself on doing, because personally, I love pets and always have. And I think my career would have taken a different path had I not been in this industry. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah.
That makes sense. Well, I love that you have such a rich history of working in this, field, and not only a love for animals and a desire to help people who are working with animals across many different fields, but it is true. You are a great teacher. I have to say, when we first started looking into insurance, I would do my best to not have my eyes glaze over. Got to admit, it's not the most fascinating topic to me, but it is so important. And so, I want to take a moment as we welcome everyone who's joining us. I see some hellos. We have Lisa from California, Annie from Michigan, another Annie from Bellevue. So, want to just take a moment to make sure all of our viewers are aware of what we're talking about when we talk about liability insurance for professionals. So, if you're a volunteer therapy animal handler or you're registered through an organization like Pet Partners and you're engaging in volunteer activities, so going to a hospital, for example, or a senior living facility, you're not being paid for your services, being covered by your therapy animal's liability insurance. But for many of us who are professionals and bring therapy animals to work with us for services that we're compensated for, we then have to make sure that our liability insurance is inclusive of the therapy animal work that we're doing. So, can you talk to us a little bit about why it's important for professionals to ensure that they're covered in the work with their therapy animals? And how do we know? Where do we look to make sure that we have that accurate coverage?
Oh, that's a great question, and it's a loaded one, so bear with me.
Okay.
But so what happens is a lot of times when people take out a liability policy. Let's say you're a therapist and you have an office, and the only reason you're getting insurance maybe is because the landlord says I need proof that you have coverage to move into the building, or because you may have your professional liability with a specialty carrier, and whether you've got general liability or professional liability, you have to look at the exclusions under the policy. And in some cases, agents that will sell things that they don't even realize that what's missing. So it's key that you discuss and you have the insurance agent, whether you work with us or whoever you're working with, inform you where it shows that you're covered and details that you're covered for all the things that you do. And for example, if you were a pet sitter or pet care provider, most liability policies have an exclusion for personal property, which pets are considered personal property under the law. And so you would have an exclusion for your most important need because you're taking care of pets.
Mm.
And so that's not even covered. So if you just go and buy a liability policy without an endorsement, and endorsements are usually going to be further in the back of the form. You can certainly read it yourself, but you should work with a trusted advisor that understands and can help you go through it because coverage forms can be complicated. They give coverage up front, then they take it away, and then they may give it back in limitations. So it's important to understand how the policy features work to unravel and make sure that you're protected for what you need and maybe not buying something that you necessarily didn't need. But as I said earlier, general liability is going to cover your bodily injury or property damage. So, meaning, let's say you have your therapy dog in your practice, someone walks in and they've got their spouse or significant other with them, and they turned away, and just so happens, maybe they brush the dog and the dog bites. That would be a bodily injury claim, or a property damage claim may be that someone else comes in and to your office, or someone's out, and they that maybe two dogs were to get in a fight. That would be a third party liability claim for property damage. And then the other feature is the professional liability, which most, I think, to my knowledge, there's not a professional liability carrier that's offering coverage for wrongful acts, which are your errors or omissions. And under the AAIP policy, we are beginning. This is going to be the very first time that I've seen it offered. We were able to talk to our insurance company that we work with, Century Surety, and they're going to start with a sub limit. It's a minimal amount of coverage, but if you can't find it anywhere else, it's better than nothing. And what that's going to cover is, if you're working with a client, it may be a special needs client, and there maybe it's you do something incorrectly, and basically you're working with the animal, and that person can allege anything. They can say that now they've been traumatized further because of your therapy, and you have to defend yourself. And that's what liability insurance and professional liability insurance policies are there for, because a lot of times what most people understand is you are given a defense under the policy. That's part of the contract. So they're going to defend you, and then if they determine negligence on your part, they're going to pay the limit on your policy. So this is how we have started out. When we were approached by the organizers of the AAIP, we were basically they were looking for a policy that covered them for both general liability and hopefully some professional as well. It also covers the animals in their care that they're bringing in. Another question a lot of people say, well, aren't I covered because my dog or my therapy animal is owned by me and I have a homeowner's policy? Well, unfortunately, if you look at the homeowner's policy forms, and this is a business activity that you're doing, there's going to be an exclusion. Maybe not for the animal itself, but for the business. So yeah, that's why it's really important that you work with a professional that understands the different exclusions. Because there are things a lot of people don't understand that there's intentional injuries, whether and you may be doing things that you didn't think you wouldn't be covered for, but it turns out because of the exclusion. So it's good to go through those with and again, whether with us or anyone, it's always good to work through it and make sure that they understand the coverage forms and where they can find it and show it to you to be covered 100%.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it's what we were aiming for at AAAIP in developing these policies. Is many professionals were finding, number one, they didn't know, like I said, that what kind of coverage they had. I think that people are kind of scared to admit sometimes that we don't completely understand our insurance, but when we hear you talk and we hear about the complexity, it makes sense why we have people like you to help us in understanding. As a matter of fact, we did some research back. It started in 2019 and have done research projects since then with professionals who work with therapy animals, asking questions about their professional liability insurance and their work with therapy animals. And a overwhelming majority of people either were not sure of their coverage or said they didn't have coverage. So it's an important conversation that we're having today and as a field so that we can move forward and making sure we're following best practices, that we're protecting ourselves. And you bring up a great point because I think it's a question we hear quite often is, does my renters or homeowners or other umbrella insurance policies cover what I do? So you want to make sure that you're understanding, the professional application and that you're looking at those exclusions where therapy animal activity might be prevented. So I'm wondering then, who is eligible for the AAAIP professional insurance program?
Okay, good. Another great question. One of the things that we've done in our agency and when working with national associations and schools and similar organizations is that we put together a master policy program so that we can offer more affordable rates. And so anyone who is a member or becomes a certified AAIS, by saying that correctly, I think, would be eligible under the master policy. And the reason that you must be a member or certified is because there is under each master policy we have for each organization that we work with, the policy covers the organization as well as yourself, but you're covered individually in your own practice. But there's an endorsement that basically says that you have to be a valid, active professional member. And part of the reason why, and one of the things that has helped us to uh, enhance our programs and grow in the pet services industry is that our underwriters at Century Surety understand that people who take things seriously and they're career minded, they take time to get certifications, they take time to educate themselves, whether it's reading articles or listening to webinars or seminars from people who are understanding, the coverage and you understand the risk, then that's a better insured for them. And so all those things come into play. And that's what, when we first brought this to Century Surety and the underwriters, and most companies, if I asked them, would you consider professional liability? Would you consider uh, if a social worker were to go into a school with an animal, they would laugh. But because they understand that we've had a long history of doing this and we have a track record and that we are working with professionals, people at least taking the time to do these things, that sets us apart and it allows us to uncover and actually assist in helping them write coverage forms with their attorneys and growing and enhancing the products as we go along. And again, it's my hope that we can do that with the AAIP policy as well, like we have with some other fields we've been in.
Yeah. Okay. So you can see then why those of you who are joining us, it's so crucial to be a member of a professional network, to engage in continued education, to demonstrate your best practices, not only as evidence of your competencies as an AAI professional, but in terms of even obtaining insurance. It inspires confidence, as it should, that you're invested and doing all the right things as you work with your therapy animal. So, speaking of the therapy animal, if a professional is looking for coverage and they have their own animal that they're bringing in, there is the requirement that they have evaluated and registered either with Pet Partners or Alliance of Therapy Dogs. Talk more about why that's a part of the requirement.
Yeah, great question. The reason we started doing that again is when I first approached the underwriters at Century Surety about this program. They did have concerns, just like every underwriter, and I could name off probably a dozen different insurance companies that will do similar things, but were hesitant to make that decision simply because as pets get older and things change, um, one, an animal can act or react. And if you are not, as a handler, educated in how your therapy dog or therapy animal performs out there in the world, that's a huge risk. Honestly, I have two wonderful dogs. I don't think they're qualified to be therapy dogs.
Mhm.
I think if you were a family member, yeah, all the family members would say, "Oh, they're great." But I know my dog. And I also, haven't undertaken an evaluation and educated myself on what to look for, other than having trainers just, and again, I've been in the field for a long time, but most people don't know, again, what they don't know and what to look for. And so it's very important that both the pet and the handler be educated. And just like I take continuing ed in insurance, and I had to take ethics and flood every other year, just because you need to understand those things. I also had to take things like casualty or property insurance, and it's conditioned in my license and as a certified insurance counselor. So I had to do I usually do anywhere from 24 to 40 hours of continuing ed every year. Um, but that's just my, the requirements are less than that, but that's what I do. It's the same thing. We feel like, by getting that repetitive uh, knowledge, and you know, just because you learned it the first time and you went through it, a year or two later, that animal may have aged. For example, I had a cattle dog, and unfortunately, he passed away about age 15. um, he would have never, in my opinion, um, ever nipped at anyone throughout, other than chasing and herding my other dogs around. But as he got older, we had a contractor in the house, and one day he got spooked, and he was aging. He couldn't walk as good as he had. He was a runner. He ran all his life. So as he got older, he aged, and he reacted differently than he might have as a younger, you know, therapy animal
Yeah.
if he was doing such. So all those things come into play and are very important to consider, and that's why our underwriter said, well, we love that that these organizations are vetting and making sure that there's some kind of registration where they are getting that education every year or every other year within 24 months. And so we
Yeah.
will not, we cannot accept anyone that doesn't provide that. I actually had a
Okay.
call yesterday from someone um, asking, well, I've been certified by another organization and they're an expert. And I said, I know who the person is. They're an expert. You're right. But they're not an expert for the whole animal's life or your whole life. I mean, you could be an expert therapist and you're likely taking continuing education as a therapist.
Mhm.
Well, you might not be an expert as a handler and with your animal and but therefore I think I've beaten this one to death, but that's my question.
No, well, we loved it when we stumbled upon you. We were so excited because we talk so much in this field about standards of practice, and one of those is that reevaluation. Animals change; they age quicker than we do, and so for that to be a part of the considerations and the animals and the organizations that are eligible, for this coverage, that makes a lot of sense to us. So I see some questions coming in from the audience, and any other questions, do feel free to put them in the chat. One of them is from Jen, who works with her own dog and also volunteer teams on days when her dog is not scheduled. And she's wondering if this insurance coverage would protect her with all of her AAI sessions. And she also noted that she's heard of school districts who want to be listed under the coverage. So she's wondering if that's possible or if it's only for individuals.
Yes, that all the above. I think the answer is going to be yes. So a lot of people who do sponsored events and volunteer for pet partners, those are covered activities typically under a pet partners volunteer act where they have been set up and formulated in the past. Now, however, if someone wants to go out, whether it's for money or not for money, some people may be doing therapy work Some people may be social workers that go into schools and just want to bring volunteer their therapy animal. Um, some people go into prisons. Some of these things, all of the above, would be covered under the policy, whether you're doing for money or therapy outside of a sponsored event. So, we're not covering, the entire Pet Partners or the Alliance of Therapy Dogs network. What we're covering is the individual when they are doing things that are outside of sponsored events. And so, it applies to social workers, therapists, uh, any type of activity that you're doing where there is a therapy dog, and again, the dog has been registered.
Okay. That makes sense. All right. And so I see another question coming in. So one's about just to, people who saying they're registered with other organizations. So you are eligible if you are registered with either of those two organizations, and we'll put some information in the chat about how you can become registered. Our sister organization at AAAIP is Pet Partners, so we can definitely help you all through that process. And the other question, of course, that's come up is how much does this policy usually cost?
Yeah, and before I get to that, one of the questions I forgot to answer is they asked about, if you're going into schools, can you name schools and facilities, or let's just say your therapist office as an additional insured under your policy, and we certainly can do that. There is a small fee, and it's important that everybody understand when you do that, you're sharing your limits with that organization. Meaning, what happens? The school may have their own insurance, but they may have an exclusion for animals coming on the premise. So now, if something happens while you're at that premise, anytime a bodily injury or a dog bite happens, everybody's sued. So they're going to name, say, the building owner, the person who's renting, and then it could be you as the therapist who was there. So you could have three people, and if they're all named as additional insured, now you're sharing those limits with those people. So, but we can do it, and it is a small charge. And as far as premiums, our premiums are very affordable. When the general liability insurance, we started the premiums off at is $261, which includes all the taxes and fees that are involved. We have to pay state taxes, uh, but $261 is the starting point with one therapy animal, and then it goes up from there. It could go all the way up to maybe $700. Really going to depend on how many therapy animals that you have registered and that you wish to cover under that policy, because we do require that registration, and it has to be up to date within, like, as I said, 24 months. And then the other thing is if you have a lot of additional insured. So if you're doing work, volunteer work over here, but you also are doing work in your local office with the three other therapists, and you need to name the uh, the practice as an additional insured, the landlord as additional insured. Those are always going to be $25 charges for every additional insured to your policy. And then the other offering that we do is what we mentioned earlier, is the professional liability for errors and omissions. And we started out with a $25,000 limit, which I'm hoping that we can increase as we go along. This is what our underwriters felt comfortable with starting out. And that is an additional $250, because that's a bigger exposure, simply because of the number of suits that happen. If you've ever been on the board of a company, a lot of people have directors and officers. Or if you are a therapist, you may have a professional liability policy. I myself, as an insurance agent, have an errors and omissions policy. Protect me if I give you bad advice. If I tell you to go out and you only need $50,000 in coverage, yet you really needed $1 million, and I told you incorrectly, then you have a claim that you can come against me. It's the same thing. And you know, I've had one errors and omissions claim my entire career in my agency, and nobody wants to go through that. We ended up winning the case, but it still cost us our deductible, which was rather sizable, $10,000, because the defense in those just defending yourself can get very expensive in those types of situations.
Right.
So yeah, so so again, the price is going to start at 261, and it's going to range. I would hesitate. I would not think I would see a premium over $700. We haven't in our past in insuring therapy animals, because many of them it's one person, maybe one therapy animal, and we haven't even offered the professional before. This is a first for us through the AAIP policy. and we're not offering anywhere else. This is because our underwriters felt very comfortable with AAIP and the certification. So this is where we're going to begin. And so most of our policies typically only range anywhere from about $260 to maybe 300.
Okay. And with your associations, that's per year, correct?
That's correct. That is an annual policy. And one thing I will say, because these are association policies and are master policies, and we've been doing this for so long, all of our coverage is effective the first of each month. And so we will take applications. Say you're a licensed therapist and dog handler in Hawaii. It may take you, by mail if you're mailing in an application, or you say you want to apply online, but you want to send us a check because you don't feel comfortable putting your credit card online. We take applications up to the 15th of the month, and we will backdate coverage so long as you've not had a claim. So if you were applying, if you knew that you were in process of getting a certification, or if you knew you were getting your therapy dog registered with Pet Partners or via Alliance, then you may say, okay, well, let's plan ahead. Let's call business insurance and discuss when my coverage, once I am eligible, when should I apply? And you typically want to look 30 days out, and then you can apply, and that way you're paying for the first day of the month. And in insurance over the years, July 1st and January 1st are big dates anyway for a lot of clients that have small businesses, simply because it matches up with your tax year or your quarter. So we've always done it that way for 27 years. And again, we've never had an issue, but if some people it may feel otherwise, but we can backdate coverage.
Okay. All right. So I see another question that came in from Laura. Laura says, "Me and a coworker are teachers in a public school, and we have both recently had their dogs certified with the Alliance of Therapy Dogs, but they'd like to have an additional handler certified for each dog. Laura's wondering, does she need a policy for each handler and dog, or can they have just one policy for each dog, regardless of which handler is working with them?"
Typically, we're going to do it per handler. So it means
Okay.
that the handler can add as many pets as they would like. But and again, it's similar to the additional insured. I believe it's $25 for each additional dog. I have to double check that, but I'm pretty certain that's what that is. And or animal therapy animal. So just so everyone knows, it's not just therapy dogs. We'll do a therapy rabbit. We'll do a therapy cat. Doesn't matter as long as they're domesticated. Um, Probably not going to do lions, tigers, that sort of thing.
Good.
Underwriters wouldn't allow it, but but any other types of therapy animals are just fine.
Okay.
And the reason we do that on the individual level is because what happens when you start spreading it out, and I've known this from working with dog trainer organizations and pet sitter organizations, boarding facilities. Yeah, you have unknowns, and you have people who say, "Oh, well, I have an independent contractor, or I have an employee," and you have to be careful of the terminology and the wording. So we feel it's best that we designate it to the actual handler, and each one of them has their own policy.
Okay. And a kind of similar question, Kelly asked, are there any options for therapy dogs in training before they become registered?
Um, Unfortunately, no, we do not offer it before they come registered because that's the requirement of the underwriters and the
Hmm.
insurance company. If we do offer an option, if you are a dog trainer, which if you do not own it and you were training someone else's pet to become a therapy pet, say you're a student and you're working with two other therapy providers that already are in it, and they're training your animal, they could add an endorsement to cover dog training, which would then cover your animal while it's in their care.
Okay.
Um, but you would still need to actually have yourself registered as the handler and your animal once you feel your pet is eligible.
Great. Awesome. Okay. Well, I'm on my last question for you, and I'll just give it a moment for anyone who's joining us to have questions. But we are going to put in the chat information where you can reach David and some information. We have some FAQs about the insurance program that we'll put in the chat for you as well. So, what do we do if someone is joining us and they'd like to apply? What steps should they take?
Great question. So what we've done with AAIP is we've set up an insurance website, which has frequently asked questions and more information, and also talks about the limits of liability. And so a lot of the things are on the web. You can actually apply and submit your application online. Um, when you do that, we actually set up a portal so for you if you opt to be in the portal, and you would get a certificate of insurance anytime you need it. You can add additional insurance and those sorts of things all on the website. And again, that website is AAAIP insurance.com. But if you would like to talk to a live person, I'm not the only one here. I am here and I'm always here to answer any questions I can. But I also have a team of six. So if you call us, our phone number is 1-800 962 4611. My extension is 214, but you can just hit zero and you'll be transferred to our pet department. All of them, I think everyone that works here now has been over 5 years. Two of the ladies behind me have been with me for 23 years. So, and that's all they got is pet. So they understand it, and they've been doing this for a long time. And they're as equally as knowledgeable as I am. And sometimes more so. So I had to bounce things off them. So yeah, so don't feel like that if you don't reach me, it's not the end of the world, because that all of our people are qualified, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. You read the frequent asked questions on the website. We can also email you, and then you can email us here. Uh, you can do it to VIP at business-insurers.com, and we can send you a PDF application, and we can answer questions via email. So basically, any way you wish to communicate. Right now, unfortunately, we're getting too many ways to communicate with messenger or text. I mean, it's hard to keep up with them all, but we'll do our best. And certainly, however you wish to be communicated with and however you wish to move forward, we feel like our portal really is a great assistance. Once you have applied and you are insured, you can make a lot of changes. You can go on the website, and let's say you now want to work at this one particular school and they're asking for a certificate. You can do that. You can do it all through the website online, or like I said, you can call us and we can make the change over the phone.
Great. Awesome. Well, and if anyone has questions about AAAIP or any ways that we can assist you, we'll put in the chat where you can reach us. But David, thank you so much for what you've done for us as an association, as a profession. This is a much needed step. We've been hearing from professionals from years who need this assistance and need these opportunities. So we're thankful. And we look forward to working with you more into the future and having more and more discussions as professionals about how we can better understand the work that we do and how we need to have it insured. So thank you so much for your time today.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me. And I look forward to working with you, and hopefully enhancing. And if there's people out there that have questions or are looking for things that they may not understand, ask the question, because if I don't know, we'll find out for you, and we'll make sure that we can write the correct answer. So thanks so much.
Wonderful. Wonderful day, everyone.
Thanks.